And now, your go-to source for year-round fantasy hockey advice, DFS, and betting coverage. This is NHL Fantasy on Ice, presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
Full dissection of Friday night's blockbuster trade is coming your way. You already knew that. Brought to you by our good friends over at Skip. It's time for another episode of NHL Fantasy on Ice, Week 17, Waiver Wire Edition. It is Nick Alberga and Jake Hahn. Jake, how are we feeling on this Monday, buddy?
Oh, we got a good one for you today, Nick. Sometimes the shows just write themselves. Like you said, we're going to break down that big Jack Drury trade from Friday. And This episode's brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.
I was going to lead with that joke, but it was way too easy. We're talking Mikko Rantanen, babies, on the Carolina Hurricanes. Lots to cover on today's podcast, including, as mentioned, the Week 17 waiver wireless, with Pete Jensen. Chris Meaney dropped by for the On the Money segment brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Also a flurry of injuries. For some reason, Jake, in the last 6 or 7 days, been a lot of guys go down here.
There has, and I do feel like if you pick up any sort of injury around this time of the year, Nick, especially with Four Nations coming up, I think it would be smart for some teams. Obviously, it depends on where you're at in the standings, right? If you feel pretty comfortable with where you're at in the standings, you get a guy with a bit of an injury, why not just let him sit? Sit the week, take the couple weeks for Four Nations, depending on if that player is playing there or not, and just massage it a little bit. We always talk about massaging things, and I think that's the way some teams could play some of these injuries here.
What was the line on Sunday? Tush push? I don't watch football. I heard that 28 times in about a 3-minute span, a tush push.
Meanie loves the tush push. Meanie's coming up, Eagles fan. I know he was loving the tush push on Sunday, so congrats to the Eagles. Tush push, it's like 100% success rate. It's crazy.
Tush push, also the feel I got when I saw this deal go down on social media. My goodness, Jake. I love trades. I got a whole brand around it. But Mikko Rantanen, I never in my wildest dreams could have expected something like that, a blockbuster to go down, involving the Colorado Avalanche out of all teams and Carolina 2 years in a row. Last year was Gensel. They get Mikko Rantanen. First and foremost, just your initial impression.
Well, you're the type of person, Nick, that once you get a trade, you're like an hour later, you're already wanting another trade. This one,
Give me Crosby, Jake.
Yeah, well, I know we all do want that. I mean, who wouldn't want to see Sid go to a contender and kind of extend that career a little bit, especially the level that he's playing at. But I think this is one that we're like, okay, we can enjoy this for a few days. This is as big of a blockbuster and as surprising of a trade as I think I've seen in years, Nick. There's really no speculation of a Mikko Rantanen trade. I mean, when you break it down, okay, maybe not too surprising that they had to trade a guy that they didn't think that they were going to sign. So when you look at it like that, it does make sense. But no rumors swirling about a Mikko Rantanen trade. I would like to ask you, if you're a fantasy owner for any of these players, who are you most excited about getting a bump? I would argue Marty Necas going to Colorado and joining that top line with Nathan MacKinnon. We got to see him play a couple games over the weekend, so thrown right into the fire. I would say if I'm a Necas owner, I'm probably the most excited out of the guys that were dealt on Friday.
I was going to say, there is one definitive clear winner fantasy-wise, and that is Martin Necas. If you do recall, first half of the season, he was incredible. It's been a bit of a struggle offensively the last little while, but to get that opportunity to go to Colorado to ride shotgun with Nathan MacKinnon, you don't think he was pissed before. He's got to be extra pissed now. I think it's going to rain points, and I think if there's a window right now to get a guy like Necas and get value on him, you got to go out there and acquire him, Jake. I don't think he's obviously going to be the level of Mikko Rantanen in Colorado, but I can't help but think there's going to be a massive uptick in fantasy value here for Martin Necas.
You're right. It's hard to replace the numbers that Rantanen has put up in Colorado for years. But if anybody can, give it a shot, it's probably Martin Necas, the way that he was playing for most of the season in Carolina. I watched both of those Avs games this past weekend, start to finish. They were both matinee games. I thought the first game he looked a little, didn't know where to go in certain situations, which you can expect. I mean, you're thrown right into the fire in a day game. I thought Sunday he looked much more comfortable in that game, and it felt like he knew where to go, and there was a bit more of a flow to that top line. And every time that Avs top line was on the ice, Nick, they were dominating. They were in the O-zone. Necas picked up a couple points. The power play, I thought, looked pretty crisp for a power play that probably hasn't been able to practice together yet. So I love the Necas angle of this. If I'm an owner there, how do you feel about the other side with Mikko Rantanen? I feel like maybe a bit of a decline just based on how much Carolina likes to spread things out. But do you think the Moose is going to be able to continue his production in Carolina?
It really is weird, right? Because normally the team that gets the best player you think wins the trade. But from a fantasy perspective, I think the breakdown's a lot different. Where Rantanen, and I just don't see him keeping that value in Carolina. Everything you just mentioned. They're a 4-line team, and they're not afraid to play a good guy on the 4th line, if you will. I think I was curious early on. It's very early, but we saw Rantanen, Aho, Blake. I think it's quite clear in my mind Carolina still needs a center. Kotkaniemi wasn't in that deal prior to finding out that we thought he was in the deal. But I think there's a gaping hole. But from a fantasy perspective, I don't know if Rantanen obviously can get to that level. But then I'm like, could he be the best guy ever in that franchise's history? Like best player pound for pound. I think you can make a serious case as soon as he hopped on that ice. Like it is bizarre to see a player of that ilk, that good of player, be on the Carolina Hurricanes. So we really don't know. It's like untapped territory. But I just can't see him as a guy who's going to be like top 15 fantasy value there.
Everything happened so quickly, Nick. I was on my couch on Friday night, just losing my mind over this trade, and every group chat's just kind of going off, including ours. And then I'm sitting there hours later. I'm watching Necas already play for Colorado, Rantanen already play for Carolina. I'm like, man, this happened fast. These guys are already playing on their new teams. And I think in both of their first games, we saw that there was a bit of an uncomfortability, right? I don't think we expect them to just hit the ground running, have chemistry right away. In Rantanen's case, it's nice. He gets his Finnish buddy, Aho, there. Yeah. So maybe there's a little bit of instant chemistry. So, we need to give it a few games before we really break down line combos and what these players are going to look like. But your initial point, I would say if I'm a Rantanen owner, I'm not disappointed. I still think there's going to be a lot of production there in Carolina, but they are a 4-line team. They do like to spread things out. They aren't as top heavy as Colorado. So maybe expect a slight dip in production for Rantanen, at least from a fantasy perspective.
Well, the unique thing here is I think we're really going to find out how truly good Nathan MacKinnon is, right? Because you take Rantanen off that line, and McKinnon's probably not going to skip a beat, and now we see a different combination in Carolina. But I would be disappointed if I was a Rantanen fantasy owner. I just don't think he's going to play to the value of where he was taken in fantasy hockey this season. So I think he takes a step back. But he's buried in this trade. Taylor Hall. I think he started on the 4th line. You have any interest in that file right now?
Not really. I think I would need to see a better line combination, and look, that could happen. Something changes in the lineup and he moves up. And then I would actually have a little bit of interest in him. So it would be a very deep league look at this point. I'd actually probably be more interested in Jack Drury, who scored a goal over the weekend and might have a spot on a 3rd line or something like that. But again, these are very deep league plays. We know what this trade was all about. And you mentioned Nathan MacKinnon, Nick, and I'm very curious to see if his game changes. We watched 2 Avs games over the weekend, completely different games, I thought, from Nate. In the Saturday game, he was doing it all himself. I think he finished with 8 shots on goal. In the Sunday game, he was facilitating a lot more and just passing off. And, Necas was actually the guy that was a bit of a trigger man. So sample size is small. I'm kind of curious, okay, who's going to be the shooter there? I lean towards MacKinnon, but Necas was firing on Sunday.
He was, and I know social media was ablaze on Friday about the speculation with Pittsburgh and Crosby, and it sounds like the Pens have been very, very busy. There's going to be a bit of a fire sale there, but you would have to think Colorado's not done. Like, there's been a lot of speculation around the name Casey Middlestat the last little while. You would have to think they're going to do something else, because they owe it sort of to MacKinnon and Makar and the other guys on that roster. So I can't sleep on that team, Jake. I know they lose the best player in this trade, but it's all about chemistry.
And because look at how aggressive they've been already this year, right? This trade is about as aggressive as it gets. You're a playoff team. You're a team that feels like you can win a Stanley Cup, and you're going to trade Mikko Rantanen. I understand you're getting Necas back and you're getting pieces back, but that's an aggressive deal to make when you're a team that is going to make the playoffs. And look what they did with their goaltenders earlier this year. They did not wait around. They went out there. They saw a position that they needed to improve on, and they went out and made 2 trades for goaltenders. So Colorado's shown us this year that they're not just going to sit around and watch the paint dry and watch MacKinnon through his prime years and waste this. They're going to get aggressive, so I would expect them to continue that. I thought Carolina would be an aggressive team as well, and we're seeing that. Maybe they're not done. I don't know if Tulsky has anything else up his sleeve. It's going to be really hard to top a Mikko Rantanen trade, though.
I think so. And lastly, I have to credit the Avalanche organization, to have that contract with Mikko Rantanen. He had a 9-team no-trade, Jake. If you compare that to other players in this league, there's a guy I cover with the Toronto Maple Leafs, full no-trade clauses. You're going nowhere. Nowhere.
No trade clauses are slowly ruining the league, Nick. And we would get way more of these types of trades. Maybe not quite to this level if we didn't have them, right? And teams were able. I get why players want them. Totally, you want that security. You want to know where you're going to play, and you don't want to get that phone call that Rantanen got on a Friday night saying, "Hey, bud, pack your bags. You're playing on Long Island on Saturday for the Hurricanes." So I do love these types of trades, but they're few and far between, as we know, Nick.
Chaos. So we're going to bring in Pete Jensen here momentarily. January 27th to February 2nd, week 17 of the fantasy hockey season. We got 50 games in total, 5 on Monday, 8 Tuesday, 5 on Wednesday, 10 on Thursday, 4 Friday, 9 Saturday, and 9 Sundays. We get closer and closer to the Four Nations break. 4-game teams, Calgary, Detroit, LA, the Islanders, Philadelphia, Seattle, Vancouver. That's 7 teams. And the 2-game teams, Ottawa, San Jose, and Toronto. Sort of fascinating, Jake, for all the conversation about the Vancouver Canucks. It's like Carolina and Chicago and Colorado who strikes, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And we're all eyes are on JT Miller. Okay, maybe some eyes on Pittsburgh because there's been some rumors out there that, we could get a fire sale, but Kyle Dubas keeps kind of shutting that down. So we'll see if something comes to fruition there. I still think the eyes got to be on Vancouver, though, even though, we get this blockbuster on Friday and we're still talking about it. We're going to be talking about it probably the rest of the season. Feels still like something's got to happen with JT Miller there and the Canucks. And look, maybe the two teams that made this trade were involved, and that takes a couple contenders out of the picture for JT Miller, so we can cross Carolina off the list possibly.
Yeah, apparently everybody's talking to Carolina because apparently they had various scenarios from Rantanen to Patterson to JT Miller. It seems like a lot of balls in the air right now when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks as we bring in Pete Jensen for a look at the Week 17 waiver wire. A lot to unpack, Pete, among, past the trade. A lot of injuries as well. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the fallout from the Rantanen trade. I think that on both sides you could pick somebody up that's been playing early on the top line. Like Jonathan Drouin is playing with McKinnon and Martin Necas. I'm forgetting these guys are just like changing teams by the day. But anyway, Drouin, 17 points in 18 games this season. He's been outstanding when healthy. And then I think with his offensive zone time percentage, the edge stat, like he's just out there for those prime chances with Nate all the time. So, and then also for Jackson Blake in Carolina, I liked his shot volume in certain games this year. He's got 12 different games this season with 3+ shots. He had a 7-shot game this season. Low-key, one of the most underrated rookies in the league this season, and he's up top with Aho and Rantanen. So I like Jackson Blake a lot. He's third among rookies in goals this season.
Well, we're going to get more into the Carolina-Colorado trade a little later when we bring Meany on, get a little betting angle from it as well. But Pete, it would not be a waiver wire segment if we didn't mention our weekly Columbus Blue Jacket, right? So who's the jacket this week on the list?
So it's a name that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Adam Fantilli, 13 points in his past 11 games. Sean Monahan sounds like he's going to miss another 6 to 8 weeks. Sustained a setback in his recovery. So that's significant in terms of Fantilli's staying power. So just wanted to mention him, the shots on goal per game for the teams around the league. Columbus is 9th, and then in goals per game, they're 7th. So they've remained an elite offense. They had a couple of bad games, but then really turned it around last week near the tail end. So I'm big on Columbus. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but a lot of garbage time points up for grabs, and Fantilli's going to get a bunch of them.
And the good news with this week's waiver wire list, Pete, a lot of center-eligible options, obviously with a guy like William Karlsson going down, Josh Norris, among others, fantasy owners need it. I love that you have contract year Morgan Geekie on this week's list. I love it.
Right, he's finding some stability up there, playing on the top line with Pavel Zacha and David Pastrnak, and I know that him and Pastrnak have had a little connection lately, so that's been fun to see. Boston's offense is waking up a little bit. I mean, they were really in a bad state of affairs earlier in the season, and Geekie is kind of sparking the turnaround there. So, yeah, I don't have full trust in Boston making the playoffs either, but I certainly have full trust in what I've seen over the past couple of weeks from Pastrnak. He was on the fantasy team of the week this past week. I mean, he's back to that top 10 overall player, David Pastrnak, from what I've seen.
It's been a very slow burn for the 2022 draft, specifically some of the top players. A lot of them have actually been traded already and moved around, but Marco Kasper in Detroit, Pete, is starting to make a bit of an impact. Do we think this is sustainable? He's got a pretty good schedule upcoming this week, so it might be worth a flyer, right?
8 points in his past 9 games, still up top with Raymond and Larkin. I heard you guys chatting about him last week, and I liked what I heard for sure. I love when a team takes a rookie and leaves him for about 10, 15 games on the top line to see what you have. Again, the secondary guys in Detroit, even after the coaching change, I didn't really see much fantasy implications, but this guy only 2% rostered. I really still don't think many people even know who he is. So take notice of the Red Wings. They're going to be in it till the end, whether they make it or miss it. And Kasper just might be that top line staple for the rest of the season based on the past 5-10 games and his production in that stretch.
Yeah, he's been the perfect in-house replacement for Patrick Kane, who remains out with an upper body injury for the Detroit Red Wings. In the crease, it's really fascinating because I think anytime like a number one goes down, you have to pounce if you're looking for goaltending, and clearly it's going to be Jake Allen who gets the brunt of the load over the next little while for the Devils, right?
Right, and just to go back off Detroit, like Cam Talbot's having an outstanding season, so he's got to be mentioned as well. But obviously the in-house replacement that you guys discussed last week is Jake Allen. And a nice win for them over the weekend against Montreal in a game between playoff teams, I guess you could say, potential playoff teams, high stakes there. So, yeah, I like Jake Allen. He's had a lot of individual performances over the years that have had fantasy implications. 2 shutouts this season in only 16 games played. Now you're going to get the workload here. We got an injury timetable on Markstrom. Could have been worse, but 4 to 6 weeks gives a lot of runway for Allen to become, a top 15 fantasy goalie for one of the best teams in the league.
Petey, you got a name that I'm very happy to see pop up on the list because I've brought him up a couple times throughout the course of the year saying, okay, at some point it's got to happen for this guy. We were all excited about him a couple years ago, but it's Mason McTavish. Are we finally seeing the McTavish that we got excited about? He's starting to get it going there in Anaheim.
Yeah, he's heating up, and I think he's one of the crucial pieces for this team moving forward. They have some other young talent, but you really, with all this garbage time and all the losses that have piled up, they've had some surprising wins over the past month of the season, Anaheim. Give them credit for that. But you need those building blocks. San Jose had it last year with Eklund through all the bad times. And, maybe there's some moves to come involving Gibson, involving somebody else from Anaheim as they're out of contention. But I really like McTavish and his keeper and dynasty league trajectory. And you're starting to see it materialize here over the past 5 games or so.
Pete, lastly, what about the blue line? I won't lie, I was pumped to talk about Anthony DeAngelo's return to the NHL on this podcast today, and then the Rantanen deal happens on Friday. But he played, over 25 minutes over the weekend, and you compliment that with the fact that Noah Dobson's week to week. It's actually a pretty good look on the blue line right now in fantasy hockey.
It is. They needed him. I'm not like a huge fan of the player in terms of his all-around game, but he can work it on the power play. He's back in New York, played for the Rangers, so call him Tony. I think that Tony D is going to run that power play better than maybe even Dobson has this season, so you're going to see some sneaky fantasy value here. And look at 25 minutes, and Pulock got hurt too, so They don't have anybody else to turn to right now, unfortunately. So he's going to be playing up there with Barzal and Horvat and some time with Nelson and a lot of points to come, I think, even if it's garbage points, if they end up being a seller.
Week 17. Time is flying. NHL.com/fantasy for a look at the entire list. It's now time for On the Money, brought to you by Bet365. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 or older. Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has concerns about gambling, visit connectsontario.ca. Joined now by Chris Meany of NHL.com. Mean, just again, a blockbuster on Friday. We want to get into the betting scope, but first and foremost, your general impression of the deal.
Yeah, a blockbuster is right. I really don't like it from the Avs standpoint, right? I mean, you trade away a guy like Mikko Rantanen's top 5 in scoring over the last 2 years and what he can do, what we've seen with Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar. I really feel like they took a step back with no disrespect to Martin Necas. I mean, he played 25 minutes in his Avs debut. That was a career high for him. So the usage rate is going to go up. If you're a Necas owner, you're loving it. Take a look at him in the betting market next to McKinnon with Cale Makar and Duran, who Pete mentioned a little bit earlier. And, if you're a Rantanen owner, I think you're a little bummed. I mean, Sebastian Aho is great, but, 18 minutes in his first game, that's a guy that, those guys in Colorado were leaned on heavily. Brendan Moore is going to roll 4 lines. So overall, in the landscape of things, I don't feel great about the Avs. They've moved from Cup favorites to 14-1. I don't think they're done, whether it's Brock Nelson, JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, Landeskog skating. He's still a ways away. They have a lot of star power, but they're not as good as what they were last week. And for Carolina at 6-1, now the favorites, I really don't like that either. I think, when you're looking at the West, you can feel better about teams like Vegas at 13-1, Dallas at 10-1. They have a lot of cap space. They can make a move. Maybe the Jets at 14-1, but I really don't like it from a betting lens. But I really do feel, Nick, that the Avs they're gonna do another move or two here to make their team a little bit better.
I was going to ask you actually about the futures markets and, what's kind of everything that's mixed around. Again, I'm kind of with you, Colorado. I'd probably need something closer to 20 to buy right now with where that team is at and some of the holes in that lineup. Carolina at 6-1 is a little steep with goaltending issues still there. But short term, how are you attacking these teams? Means like we got to see Colorado play a couple games over the weekend. Carolina played one as well. Mixed results. Are you more interested, less interested in backing these teams, at least in the short term?
Yeah, I think in the short term, certainly. I mean, Carolina's a really good team. You talk about the goals and the goaltending drying up in the playoffs. I feel like they need something down the middle of the ice. But, I would look at some of their unders, right? They don't score a lot of goals. They don't give up a whole lot of goals. And the Avs lately for Blackwood, he's kind of struggled over his past couple of games. So maybe take a look at some overs in the betting market when it comes to Colorado. But Nathan McKinnon, I feel like he may be a little bit more aggressive. At the first couple months of the season, he wasn't shooting the puck. If you're looking at shot props with McKinnon, he's been one of the faves over the past few years, but I noticed he had, I think, 11 attempts in that first game with Necas, so he was really firing the puck, and I would take a look at those two guys to light it up. I mean, Necas is going to have really good value in the betting market moving forward for, goals.
I know it's hard to repeat as Hart Trophy winner, but it just dawned on me, like, this could only strengthen the position, I think, of Nathan McKinnon. You lose, like, your Robin to your Batman, and you still produce the same. I think he could make a case again for a repeat, and we'll see what happens over the next couple months. But something I will be playing on Tuesday, Carolina at the New York Rangers. Telling you right now, if Rantanen gets to UFA, there's just something smelly and odorous around the New York Rangers. I think they're going to do something, whether it's now, whether it's in the offseason, that remaneuvers, reimagines their roster. I could see a Rantanen fit there, but I'm going to play the anytime goal and the shot prop. Like, that's where I wanted to go. Any prop specifically you like and some of these guys involved? Necas, Rantanen over the next little while. I played the shot prop over the weekend with Rantanen. He got 5 shots on goal in his debut.
Yeah, we had that as well over at NHL.com. I think it was minus 125 for 3 shots for him. So you know that he's a shooter. He's a volume shooter. He's not afraid to shoot that puck. They're going to look at him as the trigger man on the power play. And Sebastian Aho, he's a really good playmaker. I think an underrated playmaker too. So there's a Finnish connection there between the two guys. So I would be taking a look at him for shot props. And again, what Pete said earlier about Jonathan Drouin. I know he's not involved in the trade, but he's still a guy that's linked to McKinnon, the Halifax Moosehead guys. He's usually plus money for an assist, and playing with guys like Necas and McKinnon, those are 2 players to take a look at. But yeah, it'll be what I've noticed, Jake, with the Avs, they will lean on some of their top guys. And Necas playing 25 minutes was certainly alarming for me. So that's somebody, again, in Carolina who averaged 18 minutes per game. He's not going to get 25 every night. The ice time was down in game number 2 against the Rangers, but you got to take a look at the usage rate there.
I think that's a great point to bring up, Meany, and I think shows you what Colorado feels with the rest of their lineup past that top line, right? That they just, you're down in a game, you only really trust a couple of players, and the fact that Necas he was a hurricane like 18 hours before that. He's playing 25 minutes for the Avs, so that's a bit concerning. Obviously, when Val comes back, that changes things a little bit, but he suffers a setback, so a little bit of concern there in Colorado. They still have to work to lock down that playoff spot. I think they will. I'm not going to say they're in jeopardy, and there's not a ton of teams in the West that would really scare me too much, but we do get an interesting battle on Monday night, guys. St. Louis and Vancouver. Important game for that last wildcard spot, or maybe 2 wildcard spots in the West if you wanted to extend it. I kind of like the Blues here, Meany, in this game. Very small favorites on home ice. Vancouver's just a team I've been liking to fade for the most part recently with everything that's going on there. Blues relatively well, even though a couple losses lately. So I don't know if you have a take on that game, any others on Monday, but I'm feeling the Blues on home ice.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Jake. You look at the top line. I call them the top line of Kyrou, Holloway, and Schenn. I mean, Holloway's got 5 points in his past 15 over his last 15. He's minus 130 at Bet365 for a point. If you want to include Braden Schenn in there, he's got 11 points in his past 13, plus 100 for that duo to get a point. You add Kyrou in there, take the whole line, it's plus 350. But I really like the St. Louis Blues to beat the Canucks, and certainly that's a meaningful game. How about this one tonight? Nothing on the line for these two teams, the two worst defensive squads in the NHL. The San Jose Sharks have allowed the most goals and the most shots per game. The Pens have allowed the second most goals and the fourth most shots per game. It's a 6.5 goal total. If you look at the Sharks' last few games, these are the goals that have been scored in their last few games. 9, 11, 12, 9. It's ridiculous. Crosby and Raquel, plus 100 for a point. Easy enough. I mean, I think Raquel's maybe one of the best kept secrets in the betting market. He's got a 4-game point streak, 13 points in his past 18 games. I'm actually looking at the San Jose Sharks. You guys know how I feel about Celebrini, 3+ shots in 8 straight games, 1 game with 8. He's got 7 points in his past 8. But take a look at this new formed line in San Jose. Zetterlund, Granlund, and Smith. They have 14 points in their past 4 games. You have Granlund, or Smith and Zetterlund rather, have 4-game point streaks. I've never seen this before. Usually when you take a line, plus 300, plus 350, if you take that line tonight at Bet365, plus 575 for a point, you use the 30% boost over at Bet365, that's plus 875. Heck, you want to get nuts, Nick? I know you do.
I do.
2 points for each of them, 65-1. But you can have some fun with this game. Like, take the Granlund line, take Celebrini and Eklund, take Crosby and Raquel. I know you love your revenge spots. Erik Karlsson there. You're looking at 20-1 for all of those players just to pick up a point in a game where we may see 6 or 7 goals scored.
I hate hockey sometimes. I can see it being a 2-1 game. I have the over too, man. I had this circled. I'm like, you got it. Like, San Jose's allowed 4 goals or more in 6 straight games. Like, this is all the makings of a 9-8 hockey game. You just never know. But I love that insight. That's great value. And the other thing I would look at too, the Todd McLellan revenge game. I'm going to play Detroit plus money on home ice. His first meeting against the team that canned him last year in the LA Kings. Jake, how about that?
Well, yes, and I'm with Meany on maybe it doesn't have to be the exact play that he made, but if you're going to use your 30% boost, I think that Sharks Penguins game, if you like overs, that's where to use it, right? Pick your points, pick your shots. I think Celebrini's a nice piece right now. Means you mentioned how often he's been hitting those 3 shots. Maybe you want to get a little risky, bump him up to 4 shots and get plus money for that. So I think that's one that I'm looking at. Do you have a thought on the Devils and Flyers? I feel like the Devils haven't played their best hockey, at least consistently, for, I want to say, going back a month now. The Flyers have been kind of sneaky. I don't know if I love backing them here, but Sam Erson's getting the call. He's been pretty good. Maybe we look to the save market for him. Anything from that Devils-Flyers game?
Yeah, I could see like maybe the under. I mean, the Flyers have been pretty stingy. You mentioned Ersson; he's been pretty solid between the pipes as well. Like it's hard to get feel any consistency with the Philadelphia Flyers. Like Tippett kind of, if it's like, okay, he's getting going with Frost, and then a couple quiet games. Keep an eye on the status of Nico Hischier. If there's no Nico Hischier, he left the game against the Canadiens over the weekend. If he's unable to play, they can mix their lines up a little bit. Maybe get Timo Meier back inside the top 6, but that would be a reason to back the Philadelphia Flyers. Let's not forget that Connor McDavid is back here tonight as well. He's plus 110 for a 2-point game, 3 multi-point games over his past 6 going up against the Kraken. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, has been playing really good hockey as well. Back-to-back multi-point games, 3 in his past 6. So you want to take a look at that top line or just, go Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. You can get plus 160 for those guys to pick up a point.
It's funny, you almost forget about that issued statement about McDavid because of the blockbuster on Friday, but thank you for reminding us. Means excellent job. Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win, breakaway, pick 6, 3-point shot, underdog win, buzzer beater, shootout, walk-off, and absolutely every play in between is amazing. From football to basketball and hockey to baseball, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 or older. Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has concerns about gambling, visit connectsontario.ca, one of the more intriguing podcasts of the year because of the massive blockbuster Pete on Friday with Mikko Rantanen. We'll give you the final thoughts. Any plays for today? Anything you're looking at this week?
Well, wanted to give one other idea to throw out there. Carolina needs the 2C. They should try out Rantanen at center. I always liked what I saw from Rantanen when McKinnon was out. Remember when everybody was out all the time? for the Avalanche. Rantanen's production never wavers, so just an idea for Rod Brindamore there. And then for Marco Kasper, I know who we talked about early, plus 155 for a point at home against the LA Kings, again playing with Larkin and Raymond. Both of those guys are studs so far this season, so I like that number.
Looking forward to that Todd McClellan revenge game, as mentioned, LA and Detroit. Don't forget to check out NHL Unscripted with Adnan Virk and Jason Demers. The latest episode, we talk about Carolina. It includes Jordan Martinook of the Carolina Hurricanes prior to the trade, by the way, so you're not going to get commentary on that. But, Jake, coming up on Thursday, Week 17 Mailbag Edition.
Oh, look, fire up the mailbag questions involving this trade if you want. I feel like we'll be talking the fallout for this trade for quite some time. It was so big, Nick, I almost forgot Connor McDavid was coming back, so I'm glad Meany brought that up. I'm like, oh yeah, we get McDavid back on Monday night. I think I like McDavid 2 points plus 110. An angry McDavid to come back into that lineup. Seattle, like, come on. How does he not get 2 points on Monday?
Just to chime in, we actually got a mailbag question from somebody talking about this trade. We got one with a Nietzsche's stock up emoji, one that said, I think the Canes will miss Nietzsche's versatility more than the Avs will miss Mikko's star power. Interesting thoughts there. Another fan said, Avs are not winning, a 4-letter word. So a little down on the Avs, are we, fans?
Does it rhyme with puck, Pete? Does it rhyme with puck? Possible.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's a different 4-letter word.
Okay.
I would say the most annoyed person right now is probably the guy in Chicago who is hoping that the guy in Carolina now doesn't re-sign, and that is Connor Bedard. But a story for a different day. Thank you to producer Phil Constantino, for Jay Con, Pete Jensen, and Chris Meany. I'm Nick Alberga. You've been listening to NHL Fantasy on Ice, delivered by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.